Hey all, I wanted to give a short presentation about a proposal that I had called the Cookie Exchange. And before I get into the details about this and how I think it could change online advertising, really disrupt some current monopolies, and provide new revenue for publishers and a lot of new advertising options, I wanted to just briefly describe who I am, sort of my background, my experience, and why you should spend a little time with these details. The facts will, this will prove itself if you read it and you get people to help you understand it if you don't understand all the details. But this does come from a lot of experience. So, my name is Zach Edwards. I'm a digital strategist. I've been doing this for over 11 years. I got started doing this on President Obama's first campaign, 15 months on his new media team, learning all kinds of things about how the internet works, how online organizing works, building various websites. I went off that campaign, went on to work for dozens of other politicians, working on all kinds of um, political campaigns, product launches, doing lots of website development, online ad purchasing, sending millions of emails. I directed the digital strategy for Houston Mayor Bill White's gubernatorial campaign in 2010. I've founded half a dozen companies. And over the last 6.5 years, I've really been focused on enterprise analytics, optimization, A B testing, and data driven marketing campaigns. And I've worked primarily with for profit entities, people selling things on their website, people growing email lists, people serving ads, people selling audiences, buying audiences. I've bought millions of dollars in ads during this period, a couple periods with multi-$100,000 bursts in a couple weeks. Typically, in any given month, I'm spending $10,000 to $50,000 on ads, splitting that mostly on Facebook and some on Google and some other networks. I'm pretty familiar with everyone's core strategies of advertising buying, from the retargeting networks like AdRoll and Perfect Audience to the enterprise mirroring tools like Kenshu. There's various data amalgamators from the Kochavas of the world for mobile device IDs to the Axiom data appenders and everyone in between. And when I say I come from a place of having done all this, it's because I've every year I'm going through dozens of projects, helping people set up analytics stacks, sometimes helping on launches or buying some ads, but really seeing how lots of enterprise businesses, small, medium, and very large size businesses, are building their analytics stacks and then what they're doing with it afterwards. And I spend a lot of time looking at JavaScript. I spend a lot of time looking at the data layer on websites. I look at what pixels fire on websites. I look at what pixels piggyback additional pixels on them. So I use various tools where you can see how a Google Tag Manager, all these other pixels will fire off of it, or a segment that has a more of an event-driven structure, but still fires third-party pixels through it. I do a lot of pixel optimization, page speed optimization. I would consider myself an expert on geographic um, pixel, basically edge networks, where if you are using an application based in the United States and it has a JavaScript snippet that's used to track some user behavior, a lot of these smaller, newer apps, that JavaScript is hosted on a US server. So if you're a global brand and you have a bunch of people in Europe and in Australia and other places, their page loads are awful. And so I work with all kinds of different people that have pixel problems. And so I come at advertising, and my understanding of how people make money online, how you get the ads following you around the internet, how advertisers chop up audiences, how advertisers will use a pixel, drop a cookie, grab data, append it from an external source, then pass that into Facebook for ads. All of those fancy business automations I've been a part of in really deep ways. And so this is a proposal that takes the entire advertising market and drills it down way more fine grained than anyone else has talked about in terms of optimization, and in terms of how do you create an actual global marketplace for online advertising. And that's kind of a flippant comment of how do you create a global market for online advertising. But the reality is Facebook and Google are dominating online advertising, and publishers are acting as sharecroppers, is the term that is the only appropriate term to use, because they are putting these like buttons, these various data collection tools on their websites to improve the user experience. And this has been occurring for millions of websites have been doing this for a number of years. That's Facebook and Google's data collection engine. And you're not being paid. So 80-90% of all ad revenue is going to two companies. And there's thousands of companies working in this ads ecosystem. And so it's working very well. Digital advertising is extremely important. We need this market to succeed and to not be imbalanced, because imbalance creates injustice, creates inefficiencies, and at a global scale, that costs billions of dollars for businesses. And so what we really need to address is, how has Google and Facebook been able to dominate the market? They've been able to do that because no one talks about the details, and you don't understand exactly what have they done beyond having sticky products. But what have they done externally outside of their own products that have given them this market value, strength? And that's the piece that a lot of people don't understand. So Facebook obviously has gobs and gobs of data from stuff people post and engage in the newsfeed. Probably 70-80% of their data is from that, maybe. It's a huge portion. But they also have all those like buttons and all of the custom audiences and all the data people have been giving them for years now. And Google has it with Google Analytics. Ooh, it's the free analytics tool. No, it's the free data collection tool that's used to monetize AdSense. So nothing, if you're using a free product, the product is you. And so there's been a lot of like, ooh, this like button, it's so free and wonderful. Ooh, Google Analytics, it's solid. I love Google Analytics. For the record, I adore Google Analytics, but it is a data collection engine. And if people don't get into these details and understand how these companies have generated the data and the value, then you can't change the market to make it more fair and to properly distribute amongst the market players. And so what this cookie exchange does is it breaks down the concept of one user, and when they visit one web page, what happens. So this is the most basic concept, where me with my iPhone here, I go to some website, and then that website can put, based on what that website is. So let's use an example, drudgereport.com. Conservative website, news website. The users on it, there would be various demographic profiles that they could append to all users. And there's probably hundreds of segments within that audience base, or thousands actually. But let's just say from a high level, me as a user going to drudgereport.com, the one piece of data that they would be appending is news reader. That's like a high level category. We're just going to drop that on there. So that one piece of data you have to then say, as what is that value? What value has been generated? So Drudge Report, Matt Drudge, he has told a bunch of advertisers, he has a lot of advertising networks that fire on his website. He has told them, hey, here's somebody. He exists or she exists. They're on this webpage. They're on this webpage with this specific device. And here's something I can tell you about them. That information, every page view, every time a new person, a device hits that page, data is being passed and given away. Now, most publishers, 99.99% of them, only get paid for advertising clicks. So, you will also see on Mr. Matt Drudge's website banner advertisements, 3 or 4 banner advertisements. And if you as a user clicks on that ad, that person gets paid. He does not get paid from just that data he's sending out into the market. That concept of content creators, publishers, audience amalgamators, all of the current market players that capture data and don't directly monetize all of it, it's maybe passing into a Google or a Facebook or a larger ad exchange, you're giving away your value. And at scale, all of these people giving away tiny percentages, tiny pennies of user value from every page visit, all of that data collection, it's billions of dollars. It's the market domination of 2 players. And so if we start to think about the data that's appended by a publisher, the couple pieces of data that a publisher says, hey, I know this about this person, I'm going to put this out into the market, and based on the trust that you have as me as a publisher and the transparency of what you can see how I'm appending this data onto users, there is now a quantifiable value that you can append to every property or minutia within one person's cookie or tracking package. And it's technically a text file. A cookie is a text file, is the tracker. I try and use terms that like that a little bit interchangeably, but the concept here is that text file, those details that a publisher puts on your website, we need a formula so that when that user clicks on an ad, the ad targeting that was used to show that ad, so likes news, has an interest in this product, whatever that targeting is that makes that ad show up, it may be 5 or 6 properties, user properties, their location, their interests, age, sex, something like that. Everyone who provided data to make that ad showing possible and that exchange should be paid out on a formula that encourages cooperation. So a core part of this proposal is something called the Shapley Value formula. And the Shapley Value formula it sounds fancy, it sounds complicated. When you look at it, it kind of looks complicated, but it's not. It really is the simplest concept of a formula where if you put in this and another person puts in this, like if one person puts in 0.3 of something and the other person puts in 0.7, the output would identify the inputs and then properly distribute the rewards, 0.3 and 0.7. And so it has various weights that you can put into this formula. And by the mere function of that formula being public, you would know what weights are being applied to the Shapley value formula so that you basically would be able to tweak this cooperative formula over time so that at the introduction of this new market, the current market players need to be rewarded for participating in this new exchange. And there needs to be cooperation and new value and new money being added into this. So the next piece is a lot of people will immediately go, okay, if you're taking up the current ad revenue that's going mostly to Google and Facebook, and then taking that and splitting it up amongst publishers, why would Google and Facebook participate? They're losing this money. That doesn't make any sense. The reality is they're not as strong as everyone thinks they are. The data they have is based on their current data collection strategies and the market participation in the current walled gardens that they've both built. So the mere fact that Facebook is over here and Google is over here, we think of it right now as, wow, this is great. We have an advertising market. But that's not true because Facebook data and Google data does not get combined. They're both walled gardens. So when 90% of your advertising market is two monopolies that don't collaborate, the users of that market then get sucked into two monopolies, the worst of the worst. You're not in just one monopoly where you're getting kind of screwed and it's all confusing and you don't understand why the prices are the way they are. It's two. And so you end up having all these marketers trying to hack and trick their way through this current way we trade cookies and way we trade data, because the walled gardens have been a boon for both of them. So they have no sort of initial interest, would be the way most people would perceive that, to participate in this. But the secondary piece of this is the ETF market and the advertising automation. And this is where it gets a little bit even more complicated, but we're going to go back to that same description I had of Matt Drudge, the Drudge Report, and that person where a user went to the website, Drudge Report said this person's here and put a cookie, and it was a newsreader. And so basically that data, as an optimization expert, would be the way you should sort of think about an ETF market. This can be optimized, and I think I'm holding up three fingers. It's probably some sort of like something that's inappropriate, so I apologize. But an ETF market is conceptually a stock market. So an ETF market is a banking tool, and there's 6,000 or so ETF markets globally for everything from concrete to oil, which is the most commonly, most people are kind of aware of oil being traded, to everything to whiskey. You can basically create ETF markets for any industry. And what's really brilliant about an ETF market is it rewards the bankers and investment people that are participating. It rewards them to correct the market. So they only make money when they're basically predicting an imbalance. And when that imbalance occurs, the price adjusts. So with something like oil, the reason why oil isn't every single minute doing some crazy spiking, and I don't like to use the word crazy in a context like that, but it's a volatile spiking. It would be very dangerous for markets, and so ETF traders help to stabilize costs by, let's say a barrel trades for $55, and then an ETF trader says, oh, that's actually too high right now. It should actually be 54.996. They put in an ETF trade at that, and it basically drops the average cost, and the next barrel will be purchased at a lower cost because the consumer costs basically align with the market predictions. And so it creates almost like a magic balancing effect where no one market player pays too much. And so there's something called cross market, cross ETF market arbitrage, that you could have an oil ETF in the United States, an oil in the EU, and an oil in China, and then cross market arbitrage to stabilize the global prices. And so there's a lot of really, really smart concepts that have been around for decades and decades and decades that are what drive the current global economy, the stabilization effect, that we can apply to advertising clicks and advertising targeting. And in this process, through a fee applied to the ETF market, inject new money into this publisher environment. So people that have wondered, why would Google and Facebook participate? Beyond the fact that this market's wildly imbalanced, people are going bankrupt, and they have to know that participation in a broken market for long enough time will break themselves. Beyond that, this is the first time that the internet, websites, apps, people who make content that they put online, people who build things, can be rewarded and trading private pseudonymous data. And I'm going to double back into the privacy aspect of this. I have blown right past it in this whole presentation because it's sort of the grounding piece, and it's a little bit of a distraction as I try and just get into the core details. So this ETF market, how it would be applied to advertising, targeting, and the costs that companies are paying for their ad clicks, and then how this would automate global lookalike audiences and global targeting, is when that user has that cookie. So let's say that one user goes to Matt Drudge's website, and Matt Drudge appends the likely reader piece of the cookie. Then that user hops over, clicks on some link, goes over to CBS News, and let's say it's an article about some miracle cancer drug that's in a late stage trial and could cure a particularly unique and terrible form of cancer. Let's just imagine then for a second, that person then hops over to Google, searches that company name and some other piece of information, and goes further and further down this chain of providing information that would make it quite clear that maybe themselves or someone they know, or maybe they're in the industry creating the medical industry themselves, but they have a strong interest in this drug, this treatment, this potential cancer. So imagine, for instance, then a hospital is trying to get people to donate plasma for an experimental test with this drug. They happen to be near the Cleveland Clinic, and they for some reason, the FDA has approved this. They can get people from the public. They have to get plasma. And this would be an individual that maybe they want to be involved in this for some reason. So the hospital buys some ads and is like, hey, we need some support here. This has been approved. There's all these processes. If you have any interest, click here and you can fill out some forms and tell us some data. And so the first thing is that ad campaign right now wouldn't exist because HIPAA basically is a bear. And HIPAA is the Health and Privacy Protection Act. I think it's at HIPAA, and I always forget what that acronym stands for. But it means your patient, your healthcare data can't be traded. The concept of this cookie exchange is pseudonymizing that data so that it's not applied to an individual's person, an individual's personally identifying information, PII. So it would potentially allow new types of advertising. But the initial thing that should be sort of taken from this is, imagine though that person did click that ad. And in this new market, they click this ad, And following all the way back to Matt Drudge, so Matt Drudge, CBS News, the Google search, and maybe two or three other websites, those six websites contributed data to help target that ad. And so the way that the current market works, if that user clicks on that ad, the website that hosted that ad gets a chunk of the money, and then Google or that ad network gets the rest. And there may be a tiny audience fee somewhere in there, but none of it goes back to those publishers. None of it goes back to content creators or anyone along that cookie supply chain. And what this new market would do is it uses this Shapley value to match up the properties in that cookie that the user had to the properties in the advertisement, and whichever ones matched up to the ad targeting, the publishers that provided that data would then be paid out on the back end via the Shapley value formula. So someone could click a banner ad on a completely different website, and then 6 or 7 different publishers are paid out from it. And in this process of all this data about a user, of like, they like news, they have an interest in this cancer drug, they have a lot of interest in this cancer drug, they're looking at this cancer drug company's website, the various pieces here. Those are data points that then an advertisement could also be given attributes to say, I believe that people. So an advertiser currently, there's a process to target ads, and I'm not going to get into those details too much, but the way that this would be very different is the advertiser would just be saying these ads would probably interest people who are very interested in cancer drugs, live near this clinic, who are a 9.8 on a 10 of interest level, some special formula that could be, there's various filters like that exist. And an advertiser could basically say, ad networks, Facebook, Google, everyone, here's a banner ad, and I just want you to show this to anyone who lives near this and has an interest in cancer. Go. And the way that the current networks work, an advertiser would have to go to Google and buy that ad. They may do automatic bidding. They may do some special, there's various cost per click, max cost per click, max impression, all kinds of silly hacks and tricks, in my opinion. It's just people it's sucker bets. It's people that don't. All targeting is it's the bank. It's a casino show. It's hilarious to me because there's no campaign running that can't have audience optimizations applied to it. There's none. Either you can remove some audiences or add some audiences, or chop it up into different audience campaigns and change bidding strategies. There's never not a campaign that can't be improved. And these advertising companies have played publishers and ad buyers for fools by making us think that we could target our ads, and making us think that instead of describing our goal, we try and outthink our fellow advertisers. So instead of collaborating with the thousands of advertisers and publishers and all these people buying ads, we're all attacking each other, while Google and Facebook just laugh and collect the money from our inefficiencies. And so what an ETF market can automate is when a publisher or when a hospital or someone buying ads, they can just append the data pieces, and this can be automated too, obviously, about what that business is. And then users' attributes can then be matched against all of the available inventory and potential ad matches, and automate the targeting. so that a business doesn't have to go, hmm, like, why should a business have to guess who could be interested in their product? Why can't they just say, my product does this? Hunters like it, fishermen like it, it's for people 18 and up, and then that's it. And then all you're working on is the creative. And that automated targeting gets reduced, expanded, changed, tweaked, all automatically by people trying to optimize the ETF markets and trying to get the most cost effective, or rather the most relevant ad in front of someone, because on those clicks, the market is paid out. So the relevant matching is done through the ETF cost balancing. And so through these two sort of mechanisms, you end up with a really stable and consistent environment for the automated targeting. And I'm not going to get into all the details here, but trust me when I say that this is what it does. Like, this is how you automate all businesses, is by getting that data and breaking it down to its lowest common denominator. And as soon as you break it down to your lowest common denominator, AI can do this. There are algorithms that are just perfect for this, and they're already existing. This is how a huge disruption is going to occur, where current people buying ads, you're no longer going to be buying ads. Machines and rules will be buying those ads. You will be helping to write rules and test rules. So the ETF market traders, it still requires a significant amount of participation from people who currently optimize ads, because you basically are going to have to work with the bankers, the investment professionals, the people creating these ETF indexes and baskets, and you're going to help create baskets, and you're going to help them go, if we're going to look for rules, dynamic rules, users that have these attributes, we want to weight the potential bid on this advertisement with these parameters, because the algorithms are more likely to outperform it. And it also allows the creative staff, when creative campaigns, art outperforms science every day. Art will always outperform science. Straight up, everyone who doesn't know that is just distracted. And art, a beautiful campaign, a viral campaign, that campaign that just pops, your costs go to nothing, the ad success goes through the roof, and successful advertisers, successful creative, currently can't be rewarded by the current market. But with the Shapley Value formula, the creative assets that are being shown can actually be a part of a unique part of this ETF market, because creative campaigns that flip the needle, that take a standard performing audience and product matchup, and then an overperforming creative will just flip that market. That's what moves a market. And so these creative shops will drive the ETF, some really unique basket strategies for these ETF markets. And the current audience amalgamators, the ad rolls, the various axioms of the world, there's a lot of other opportunities for helping to optimize this globally by bidding on the ETF baskets. And it's a really, really, really exciting thing as an optimization expert for me to be able to productionize this, so that eventually dynamic regex could be applied, where based on a user's marketing behavior, the things that they've done in your marketing funnels, what they've visited, what ads they've clicked, what they've bought in the past, all that data can be pseudonymized, so it's not attributed to an individual person, but then that data that is just on their phone, so that they can also clear at will, and there's some additional benefits to a stable market like this. It makes it much easier for a user to clear their cookies when it's one network and everyone is buying into the same one cookie exchange. Tons of benefits there, but there's just some additional concepts here of stability that I may have to get into in another video. But before I sort of wrap this video up, there's a lot of complexity with this. There's a lot of discussion that has to happen. I don't make videos like this. I don't do this for the public. I do this privately for clients. I do things like this normally are a competitive advantage, and I wouldn't put this out here in a public proposal. But the reality is this requires a lot of collaboration, and it's extremely complicated. And the only way to fix the current advertising market is communication about the current problems, breaking those problems down to their smallest possible parts, and then determining the value of those parts and how that market could potentially reevaluate that value, adding in new value into these markets, because markets can't change unless there's an incentive to change, and then providing a stable regulatory environment where pixel implementation and advertising fraud is just like insider trading. And as someone who works in this business in a very niche part of it and looks at a lot of people's pixels and looks at a lot of custom JavaScript and has seen a lot of what I'm going to call multipliers, which is a cute way where there's some players that have you can inflate page view numbers by adding a multiplication sign. It's a little funny looking asterisk thing in code, and a number into your JavaScript for tracking. And there's all kinds of funny ways to mess with ad networks and the type of data you're sending to investors, and people should not trust the current market. You can see for yourselves that it's imbalanced financially. That's plain as day. But there's other insidious things that can occur through a lack of consistency. And it's conspiracy theories, it's developers and entrepreneurs and various current market players just trying to maximize revenue and doing whatever they can in the current environment. But I can tell you that this flattening of the online advertising market and the expansion of certain concepts so that everyone is trying to fire the same cookie on every web page, this global pseudo-cookie, whatever we end up calling it, will be able to have internet meter readers where technology will be able to read websites and determine whether that website is sending data into the exchange ethically, legally, within the bounds of all the norms of the legal norms and the any other market norms that are part of it. We're going to be able to automate that, and currently no one can. And it is the future of advertising is automation. And if the nth part of your plan doesn't get to automation, then that is not a new market. And so the core concept of this market here is AI at every step of it to save money, help the world coordinate better, collaborate better, bring new value to publishers and content creators, and more appropriately distribute the value of data collection across all those market players. I think this is the way to do it. I think there's tons of variations. There's lots of things to discuss. But if we can agree on this, the concept of a market, then PII doesn't matter. Personally identifiable information doesn't matter anymore. You don't need to know Zach Edwards in Philadelphia is the one that is interested in those hospital and those cancer treatments. You don't need to know that my name or my location because you have the cookie, and that cookie can be cleared by a user. So if a user gets sick of seeing the ads that they see on Facebook and Google and all the other random places, they would clear one cookie and get a fresh slate. And the new market allows someone to even do something like a shopping mode where you say, instead of basically saying, I could use a new white t-shirt and just saying it out loud, and then one of your goofy devices listening to you just steals it and starts showing you Facebook ads, which everyone thinks is disgusting and awful. A shopping mode would be, it could still be a verbal interface, but you would say, hey, I'm not going to say one of my, either of the S word or the A word, because both of them will just start talking to me right now. Sherry, can you enter shopping mode? I'm looking to buy a mid-sized sedan that's used, that is within 3 states of me and less than $19,000. You hit that submit button, boom, it goes out to every network. Now, every single person that has inventory that matches that, you could then start swiping through it, going, not that one, no, I'll save that, maybe I'll look at this website later, that website, no, oh, that's an interesting one, I'll save that. It creates a new incentive for users to engage and to give data because they know when they buy that car, they then go, done, and they don't see any more ads for Jeeps and all kinds of other cars. And that saves people money too. The exclusionary benefits are massive. The amount of money being spent by companies targeting products to people that already bought it is bananas. And companies don't know how to fix it. I build exclusionary audiences for a living, and companies do not know how to do it, and I can't do it good. But I promise you I can do it better than 99.99999% of people out there. But it doesn't work, and that's why those ads keep on following you. But if we had one cookie exchange, the benefits for users are astronomical. And by pulling the PII out of the market, which GDPR has already done, and that's the European privacy law that everyone got those privacy policy emails about, it's going to go global. If you don't think it's going global, you're nuts. It's going global. PII is going to be gutted. There's already countries developing new types of IDs that don't require your name and your location. Much smarter, from Aadhaar in India to some of the apps in China. The future is pseudonymized data not appended to a person's name. And if your market is somehow thinking that GDPR is going to be reversed or that's not where the global trend is going, you don't even need to provide a comment to me. I honestly don't even need to hear your perspective because you're so wrong. You don't even know where we are right now, let alone where we'll be tomorrow, let alone years from now. GDPR is the rock solid change, the bubble of the internet that most people didn't see coming, and it's not changing. Vermont, California, a bunch of the quote liberal states in the United States are already passing laws. It is a global phenomenon that will change every business, every publisher, every advertiser, and it's going to require us to change these markets. So I really appreciate everyone who has given me feedback, who sort of indicated to me that I needed to make this video. And generally, everyone who's been a part of this discussion at the companies I worked with, my clients, my peers, We have a saying amongst our peers in the pixel and optimization industry. We have job security through 2040. And this is the truth because no one's doing this. Even big advertisers, big publishers don't really break it down into the most fine grained details. Um, we need more people to understand this, though. So if there's parts of this that you think could use more details, if there's things that are confusing that you think are problematic from bias, from discrimination, from fraud, all those types of things, we need to answer them. And I believe that this market, this transparent market, a singular market, the way that this balances with automation, it is the solution. I believe um, it accounts for all of the considerations, but um, that doesn't mean that these algorithms aren't going to need tons of tweaks, and then we're not going to need quite literally regulations. And it's going to be a totally new industry optimizing the deployment of the data into the cookie exchange, optimizing the ads on the cookie exchange, the regulatory process to ensure that there's no data stuffing or anything that's inappropriate, the SDKs, the data that can be brought into the cookie exchange from Facebook, from Google, from the TV manufacturers, from all these people that create data. It can all go into this cookie exchange. And this proposal I have gets into all the details. I tried to keep it as high level as possible, but rest assured, I thought about pretty much every source of data that exists, um, and how it's essential for us to get this into one centralized market as soon as possible, break down the walled gardens, protect user privacy, inject new revenue, distribute it appropriately to publishers and content creators, and that's how we fix it. And so thank you again. Thanks for the time and any feedback. So take care.